You're listening to the AI Moment with me, Jonathan Wagstaff.
Me, Danny Denhard. And this week's episode is dedicated to voice and using voice for AI, training, sales role play, and different ways that you can leverage voice to get the best possible outcomes for using AI and using it to get the best output. So, Jonathan, where do you play with voice, and how are you helping companies with voice AI?
This is quite often one of the surprise moments if we're doing workshops, Dan, when you show people what it can do. Without very much preamble, you can get it to do some quite interesting things. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I was working with a hotel group a little while ago, and we set ChatGPT up to role play being a customer with a complaint. So you could put it in voice mode and say, it's a hotel receptionist training. We'd like you to be a customer with a complaint. And then let's see where we go from there. And it did a really good job of being a customer with a complaint. We then had the receptionists deal with that complaint. So they're in voice mode, obviously. They're having a conversation with ChatGPT on a phone, basically. And he did a really good job. It was a very convincing customer with a problem. And the first receptionist who handled it well. And it then immediately went into kind of coaching mode where it said, okay, that was a good exercise. Here are the bits you did well. Here are the bits you could have done better. You might have answered this question in this way instead of that way. So it's a really great tool. That's one example. The other one I give straight off to start us off is it's a really great sales role play tool. So again, if you want to say, okay, I'm about to go and see a difficult customer, I want you to role play this customer. I want you to be that this is the challenge they've got, the problem they've got. This is how they're likely to behave. I'd like you to role play the conversation. Again, it's very, very good. And a sales manager friend of mine was saying she knew she was going into a tough conversation. And she said, I asked it to be brutal. And she said, boy, was it brutal. So it can be very convincing. And it's a really strong tool for those real life conversations, rehearsing those real life conversations. What are you seeing, Dan? Where have you seen it?
Yeah, one of the best examples and unlocks you gave me really early on was using it when you and a sales leader were recording what you were saying, going back and forth, and then you turned it into a presentation with Gamma, and then you edited it slightly. So you created from start to finish basically a sales strategy document for that customer, and it took them, say, 10, 15 minutes to edit, as opposed to spending all day on this sales portfolio. So that was one of the best unlocks that you gave me through voice. One of the ones I like to talk to companies on around voice is a lot of customer support and customer service requests and tickets, and then turning that voice mode into content for the website. So what a lot of people do is, whether you use Zendesk or one of the different help tools, is very often you'll get someone asking questions or having very specific problems, and then customer support will answer it, and it's then very difficult to then roll that out and then use it in different areas and different support for the system. So other users can log in and see it, or they experience the same problem and have it. What I've found is there's a lot of companies that are trying to go back to voice and having video calls or having actual phone calls. And what this enables you to do with AI is really go from understanding the customer problem, it then searching the database, and then either enabling the customer support agent to answer that question with the really specific answer, or having the chatbot that does it. And what I'm finding is some of the smarter companies, they'll have the AI almost come up when the questions are asked. It will prompt them into the right direction. It'll then have the human agent to go through and talk through certain nuances that they know and they experience, and then it shortens down the time that's required on customer support or customer success tickets. And just the last example that I really like people doing is, there's a lot of people who work in product or marketing that speak to their customers. And actually what voice enables you to do is use natural language. So rather than force fitting like we used to, is now using natural language in understanding product feedback, or with marketing, it's how do you use your customer language in your marketing versus the lingo and the buzzwords that often marketers will use. So taking a lot of that voice and a lot of the natural conversation and then rolling it out through product iterations, through how you speak to your customers, like the micro content that you put out to the, to real marketing campaigns. These are all ways that you can leverage voice and leverage it in a way that's very natural and also gives you a way to, repurpose, reuse and strengthen, a lot of the time strengthen what you've got, but get to the end much quicker.
Yeah, there's a story doing the rounds about IKEA, which you may or may not have heard. The gist of the story is they were looking at, I think, reducing the number of service agents they got. One of the things they did was they said, well, let's take all of those recordings that we've made over the last God knows how many years of service desk calls, and let's, it's almost certainly a Pareto rule thing here. So let's pick the sort of 80% of calls, which will be 20% of the questions we get asked, and we could probably do something with AI voice agent to fix that, and then we can get rid of a lot of our agents. But when they did it, they found actually that was all true. But rather than get rid of those agents, they also found that something like 40% of the calls they were receiving were around interior design. And their stance had been, we can't help with that. We don't do interior design. Long story short, what they did was they repurposed some of those agents that would have been let go by giving them some interior design, basic training and skills. And they've now got a revenue stream of God knows how big it is, where they're selling an interior design service on top of the other stuff they sell. So they've used those recordings and then the voice analysis to find a new service that they can take to market, a new revenue stream. Coming back to what we're saying with individuals using voice, one of the biggest step changes I've seen is going back to sales teams. So many sales teams do not rehearse or role play sales conversations. And there's plenty of evidence out there that the top sort of 15 to 20% of sales teams do, and they get much better results because they are practicing their sales techniques during a rehearsal session. They're not practicing on the customer. Now, the challenge is lots of salespeople are very reluctant to do rehearsal calls or role plays with each other. It feels fake. But actually, of course, AI is a huge opportunity to do that because it can make it be whatever customer you want it to be. And it doesn't feel kind of as silly rehearsing like that by yourself as it does maybe rehearsing with a colleague on a call like that. So it's a very, very strong tool for people to role play and rehearse sales activity so that you're really slick by the time you get into the customer, particularly if you've got, say, a new product suite to take to market, then rehearse with the AI so that by the time you sit in front of the customer with the new product set, you're really slick because you practiced on it. It's giving you feedback. Maybe you teach it the features and benefits of the product you're trying to sell. And so it knows what you should be saying. It can give you all that kind of feedback. So that's a really, really strong use case for me. Areas where there's been reluctance, as we talked about before, there's been pain points. Well, that's a pain point, salespeople rehearsing. Great use of voice AI, I think, to help people train. And then the other thing to say on that same subject is repetition is the key here. Do it lots and lots until you're really slick. So when you're doing those kind of training scenarios, repeat until everybody's really, really slick.
Just remember, humans are used to having conversations and the spoken word over typing. So that's why so many people are much better at speaking than trying to type things out, and they're much quicker at doing so. So if you're one of those people, voice mode and voice AI is going to be something that's great for you. If you're someone like me who likes to write to challenge my thinking and then have a conversation, that's great. I know a lot of startups within the London scene, AI startups, actually have tiny lapel mics on that encourages them to actually have conversations with AI and it becoming normal versus it being seen as weird that you're just talking to your computer. So there are all these different use cases. And if you have dyslexia or any other learning difficulty, voice often is an unlock for a lot of people with AI. So you can actually have that conversation and don't worry about the structure and the flow of your writing. AIs are very good at unpicking that. So they're just a couple of different lighter ways that you can leverage that. So if we were to summarize 2 or 3 points there, Jonathan, what would the 2 or 3 top takeaways be for leaders?
Well, a couple of, before we get to that, Dan, you've just triggered a couple of thoughts in my mind. One is, I know people who are using the voice mode of ChatGPT in the car on the way to work in the morning. So they kind of brain dump everything they want to get done that day. And they say, organize that and email it back to me as a to-do list that's organized and structured. And the other thing I know is people using long car journeys to do some really good thinking. So again, you turn on voice mode with ChatGPT your phone is Bluetooth to your car, so you can do it hands-free as you drive along. And you start just something you want to think about. You say, okay, I want to discuss this with you. And you have a conversation with it to maybe think through some big business problem or some big idea you're trying to work through. You can use the length of that car journey or a period of that car journey to really use the voice mode to really get some good stuff done and some good clear thinking, because obviously you're driving along, you're not much distraction outside of the road. So there are a couple of other areas. The summary would be, I think it's an underused tool. I think voice mode is, it's very easy for all the major players to download the app onto your phone and then use your phone in voice mode. It's a really strong tool. It's an underused tool. It's probably in some ways easier to have the conversation in voice mode. So the thing we've talked about on many pods where we say, don't just ask a question, take the answer, have the dialogue, really in the context, all those things. That's easier in voice mode. And it's also an excellent training tool, as we've said. If you want to practice conversations, service desk people, salespeople, it's a really strong tool for doing that. So I'd encourage people to give it a try, see what results you get. And, if you get anything interesting, let us know. We'd love to hear experiences people are having with this stuff.
Well, Jonathan, I think I'm going to go and try voice mode again today. So thanks for the inspiration, and we'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks for listening today, everyone. If you liked what you heard, please give us a rating and review in any of the podcast players. We have a supporting newsletter, which is aimoment.co.uk, that comes out on Mondays and Fridays with every pod, and we dive a little bit deeper. So please subscribe there. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.